Inside Action Innovate. The Master Series elevates.
In this session of the Master Series, Nico Sprotti, solution engineer at Microsoft, breaks down agentic engineering in Copilot Studio and how to move beyond basic RAG setups when working with tabular data. You'll see live demos covering how to connect agents to Dataverse, Microsoft Fabric, and even Google BigQuery using tools and MCP servers instead of traditional knowledge sources. Nico shows how to display real-time AI reasoning in chat using adaptive cards, generate dynamic charts via a matplotlib MCP server, and surface filtered Power BI report links directly from conversational context, all inside Copilot Studio. He also compares Fabric Data Agent versus a direct DAX query tool approach, covering trade-offs around model selection, GA readiness, and telemetry. Whether you're a maker, architect, or developer, this session gives you practical design patterns you can apply to your own agentic solutions today. Let's check it out.
And the goal of today is to discuss agentic engineering. So really, how do we do those tools that, the type of cloud code model or cloud cover works. But today we're going to focus on tabular data. So tabular data, selfishly, Power Platform, any kind of business application data coming out of Dataverse. But your data could be on a Fabric, could be on a SharePoint list, could be on Excel, or could be even on a Google BigQuery. Let's say, your organization, maybe a Google BigQuery or Databricks, what have you. So we're going to focus on how do we query this data. We're going to spend most of the time in the tool. We're going to spend most of the time in Copilot Studio. And what we're going to hit first is what not to do. We're going to discuss quickly on RAG, augmented, retrieval augmented generation, right? Understand a little bit how cloud code and tooling works. How do they have architect that thing so we can get inspired for our next tool? Cover the basic, I have a spreadsheet coming from the business. How can I just, start chatting, but relevant with a spreadsheet that may be hundreds, thousands of rows, right? And then few tricks, past the basic, you in Copilot Studio, few tricks how you can enhance your chat for those tabular data. So one thing is, how do we display the AI reasoning to the user? It may take a minute to come back as we wait a minute every 15 seconds explaining, what the AI is doing. We connect to Fabric. So in Fabric, we have Fabric Data Agent, but we could also bring some tooling. So there is no one way to architect, right? So we'll cover the pros and cons of Fabric Data Agent versus giving just a regular DAX query tool. How do we capture those query logs? We already have many logs out of the box in the Dataverse supporting Copilot Studio, but at times when we query those Fabric or whatever data set, we may want to have a very strict history log of every single query, every single user on behalf of which bot has sent and when. We'll discuss charts. How do we render good charts to the user from this tabular data? And close to chart will be also Power BI reports. So many of those organizations have lots of Power BI reports that the business use and love. So how could we leverage these current Power BI reports assets that we have in the organization and kind of add on a chat on top of a BI report that I can chat and go straight into the Power BI report filter with the context of my chat. Since for you folks, if anybody is in Google BigQuery, showing you how it works with Google BigQuery, and then from there extrapolate to whatever may be your data stack. And if we have time, also SharePoint list, because SharePoint lists are tables many organizations use and manage. You should not do that. It's risky. There are cons to do that, but the reality is many data in the organization are sitting in table as a SharePoint list. So how do we get that? And then last, if we have time, is how do we get just like Excel? Like in many Excel on SharePoint, I have a table in my Excel. I don't want to copy that table anywhere. I don't want to copy that SharePoint, that spreadsheet everywhere. My business is maintaining. How can I run queries straight to that Excel spreadsheet without having pure zero copy data, no RAG mechanism? All right. So that's for what we're going to try to show and today. So you don't have to remember everything, but hopefully give you a few tricks as you get home. The first thing I want to show you is the RAG. In Copilot Studio, what we don't want to do for tabular data, right? So for the purpose of today, we'll be working with an agent. It's called table talk, right? Like table talk, set the table and start the conversation. So as of now, we have all of our tools and agents and topic are off. So it's kind of like we just have the model and we have the instruction. But pointing out to RAG will within Copilot Studio live within the knowledge. So we have here, we could add a knowledge and go straight to a Dataverse table. Or we could go and then upload a spreadsheet. It would work. I'm not saying it's not going to work. Connecting to Dataverse, it's a 3-year-old feature. So the reason I'm saying that here, connected to Dataverse, the 3-year-old features where back then we only had like a GPT-3 and vector database. So connecting to that means there is a mechanism behind that does natural language to SQL, but also there is some RAG mechanism. It will give you the signal of the search, but let's say if you have, 100 products, you may not be able to do a select count for these, how many products do I have, right? So for pure tabular data, do not start there. Now, where do we start? If we take a look at, and I'm going to take, I guess I could go here. Let me take a look at how Cloud Code is architected. So Cloud Code, all it does, it has like at its core, it has a couple of tools. One key tool it has is a grep tool. So if I go on my computer and I go to the command, I can do grep, right? So it's the same thing. So basically it is using like grep, and then there is this grep rip, but basically it is using a grep under the hood. So all we did here is just went to Cloud Code and ask it, tell me about your search file tool, right? I understand it is built on rig grep, but how does it differ from the actual rig grep, right? So, and then it tells me, okay, what is good, what is not, it tells me the difference. Couple of things is, if I'm not going to read the things, but it is like a grep, but it is limited. It is truncated to a couple of the first 200 lines. They are few, the parameters are tweaked a little bit, but under the hood, it is the rig grep that we know, right? So the reason I'm showing that is because a lot of the exercise we're going to do today, we're going to take a basic Power Automate connector that we know we have. So maybe Fabric, maybe Databricks, maybe whatever. And all we're going to do is kind of wrap it up into a conversational mechanism that sometime we'll have to trunk, maybe sometime we'll have to change a little bit, adapt the variable, but that's about it. And then we give that tool to the AI orchestration, and then if well declared, like if we would have declared the system instruction of the tool properly, it would work like recursively. So we'll have one tool, and then within one query, you may use that tool 3, 4, 5, 10 times. Okay, so that's RAG versus kind of truly agentic orchestration, like an example here for Cloud Code. All right, let's go back into our agent and start. All right, first thing first, the basic, importing a table and querying Dataverse. So a lot of time, business comes in with a table. I'm going to show you the table I have is, and I'm pretend, it could be extracted from SAP, it could be extracted from Oracle, whatever. This is a spreadsheet of 700 plus work order that I got and I need to kind of connect to. So we're going to do spreadsheet, but it could be whatever. The way to do that, like the basic way to do that within Copilot Studio is to go to the Power Platform. And we go right there. And then you can create tables in Dataverse table. So we're going to create that table, and then we're going to give it a tool to the agent to go search that table, to go query that table. So if you go to table right here, and we're going to create a new table. This is like super simple, right? And then we're going to import from my spreadsheet that we were showing earlier. I think I need to close it, otherwise it's going to yell at me. Let me close my spreadsheet. And then here are my field service work order. It's processing the import, detecting the columns, and hopefully it's going to load all the data. Here we go. So it picked up my table, and I'm going to import. Once it's done importing, we go to our agent, and we're going to give it a query tool to discover and query that table for us and get plenty inside. So, and that's it. Save and exit. Now, back to our agent. And I'll check later if it's saved or not. Oh, okay. So back to our agent. Like I said, we have all of my tools are off. We're going to turn them on as we go to the demo. But the first tool we're going to turn on is the Microsoft Dataverse MCP server. So if we look into the tools that are available in that MCP server, so let's turn it on. And no tool available. Let me refresh. Great. Turn it on. And see what we get. That one created. Yes, our table is there. Perfect. We have our work order table just created. And now in our Dataverse MCP server, we have plenty tools to query the data model on Dataverse. We're not going to use all of them. We're going to be able to list table, describe a table with a column, read query. That's the tool where we're going to be able to fire select statement to the Dataverse. We don't need to create table, update table, create record, update record, delete record, search, fetch, list app. We just do query. We don't need all of those things to pollute more the thinking of the AI, because the more tool we give, then we don't need it. Just gonna use token, and then also can bring some hallucination for the model. So here we go. So now I have one tool, and I'm gonna look and say, all right, can you look up my work orders? How are we doing? I didn't tell him the table. I didn't tell him. So hopefully it will work. So hopefully he should fire up the MCP server, get the list of table, find the table with the name work order, look at the columns of the table of the work order, and start sending and firing a couple of SQL query. All of that using the three tools we just selected in the model, in the MCP server. So here we go. List the table, describe the table. Oh, our task is picking up other table. Didn't find it. Dang. Is that not complete? Oops. But you go see it, like you go see it, he's kind of firing up queries against Dataverse. So here, like if we look like read query, select, so this is an actual select statement, and then it comes back, and then from there, processing. Wish he would have, I'm worried he didn't find the table we could just created, but we'll see. All right, while he does that, be mindful of the time. Next thing we want is showing the AI reasoning, right? So the trick for that, there are different tricks. One trick, oh, here we go. Actually, he found it. Wow. So he's giving me a couple of insights about my work order table. Yeah, actually, I was wrong. Damn, actually, he found it. And it's big table. It's like 18 column plus. And then here we don't see it, but we will we'll go into charts. But per default here, I put it in an instruction to, if it makes sense, use mermaid blocks to display the answer. So here in the test chat, it just show the pipeline flow, and then like it doesn't render mermaid, but like let's say you publish to M365 Copilot within the chat, you will have a beautiful mermaid chat for that mermaid block for that particular chat answer. The cool thing here, and actually I'm so happy it worked, is the cool thing here is another trick is you want, like, we are doing data insight, we are doing data exploration. So I like to say, like, insight, we don't look for them, right? We see them. We don't look for them. Like you can look until you see them, and the insight is not showing up. So it's a lot of exploration, and hey, maybe you should look for that, So help at the end of the instruction, telling like, hey, offer the user to be curious and provide 4 or 5 questions that to keep exploring the data. It is a little trick, but that would force the user and help me kind of explore the next move into that data, So what's the average time from received date to work order creation? Which consultant is the most efficient? Are there any patterns between service request type and how quickly they get approved? Should we distribute Maria critical workload given she has 4 assignments? So these are like good questions, and we can tweak them and so on. But these are like kind of want me to kind of keep exploring the data, right? All right, back to AI reasoning. Before the reasoning, I guess I may do Fabric. So for Fabric, I'm gonna do is we're gonna turn off our Fabric MCP server. We have 2 ways to architect, many ways, but many 2 ways to query Fabric data, to query Power BI dataset, right? So one of the main way, but it's still a little bit, it's still kind of old. I won't say old, but one of the main way we've been working at it is if I open Fabric, we have Fabric data agent. So in my data set, in Fabric, I have surface bot table from Dataverse, my analytics that are still in Copilot Studio. I have surface as well the table of conversation transcript, which has conversation transcript being logged with the interaction of Copilot Studio, and an additional log table that we will use to actually use for any kind of DAX query being set to Fabric. So I have these 3 tables, and then the idea here is to have a Fabric data agent that we can say, how does my data look like? And what you do here, it will write a little bit of code, and then basically fire DAX query at the 3 tables I just narrow in that Fabric data agent. Right? Okay, how does my data look like? Here's a summary of your conversation data, looks based on what's available. 3 conversation, each conversation appear. Okay, and then you give me insight about my conversation yesterday. So that's what I'm getting based on this data. And then I can publish that agent and then surface it right there as an agent in Copilot Studio. And then Copilot Studio at this point is like enhancing your Fabric data agent. You can add, feedback. You can add a better model on top of it. You can add, many things. So that's Fabric data agent, and there are plenty things online should you want to explore that route. The mechanism we're going to do now is, instead of sending to Fabric Data Agent a question that basically write DAX query, come back to me, we're just going to give the AI not reset data fresh, send DAX query. Here we go. We're going to give it a tool that just send the DAX query. So if we explore that tool for a minute before we launch it, all it does is it does pass the data model ID. What is the goal of the query? Why are we shipping this DAX query? And the actual DAX query. And then the bot ID and the conversation ID just follow. But if we look at the flow, because behind the scenes it's no more than a Power Automate flow that leveraging an out-of-the-box GA Power BI connector, it's actually quite simple. So I'm just going to share it with you. Because that mechanism we're seeing now, you apply it for Power BI, but you're applying for about any connectors that are available on the Power Platform out of the box, depending where your data may be. The Salesforce, the Snowflake, the blah, 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 blah. So the 6 parameters are there. We were looking at earlier in Copilot Studio. And here is the core action. Run a query against the dataset. So we plug in the data model ID and we plug in the DAX query. And that is a good old GA Power Platform connector to Fabric, to Power BI. And then 2 things here, because this DAX query is going to come from the AI. So he's gonna sometimes make mistake. He's gonna put a query that doesn't match the columns and what have you. So if that's why we do a scope where that allows us in the Power Automate to trap if that thing's return in error. We can say, okay, if it's successful, trunk the 100 records or the first 30,000 characters. So if you remember Cloud Code, like the grep, trunking, that's exactly what we're doing here. And then saving the query, the actual query in a log table that we just created that has the log, that has everything. And then we can add the cost, we can add latency. So that'll give you the whole telemetry governance that you need. And then you can use that table and then feed it wherever. And then respond to the agent. If the Power BI query is not successful, well, we just slightly change the output, but we tell the engine. We come back and then we don't fail the Power Automate, we come back. That way it will fix itself. Okay, so that is like basic power tool that is very powerful. So going back to the agent. And going back to the agent. Let me fire a query. There we go. We are on. Oh, and just to show you where do I plug the data set, just to be fair. Here we're saying your goal, these are the instructions. So your goal is to help the user, think like a seasoned data analyst. And then I give it the data set in the instruction. We could have a topic that the user can just make it a variable and the user can decide which data set, or you can make it like specific for your given agent. So it's up to you. But like, at least for Fabric, we have 2 data sets. One is a music data set and one is a Copilot Club activity data set. So if I say now, how many music do I have? How many songs? Maybe that would be better English. Hopefully, he's going to pick up the tool, send few DAX query, and then we'll see the DAX query happening, and then answer against what we have in our music dataset. Here you go. So first time he's sending evaluate top 3 of the table song. So all he does here is just the first 3 records to know which columns are in the thing, and then we got an error. Shoot. Well, I should have tested. That's okay. So we saw the flow. That's okay. We're going to move to the next one. Boom. All right. Here we will ping. We're going to ping that flow differently. So let me turn that off. We're going to move to the next move where we're going to use the same flow, but now we're going to display the thinking. What I'm going to do, I'm going to debug today. How do we display the thinking? We're going to use topic. Topic, it's like a flow. It's like a tool where you can also display messages in the chat. So we have one topic that is sending a DAX query with the thinking log. So if we open that topic, and hopefully it will work, if we look at the input of that topic, so the variable that we're going to ask the AI to plug in there, we have the query goal, we have the DAX query, and the dataset ID. And then after that, all we're doing is we are calling the Power Automate flow that we were just calling earlier in the tool. So the same flow we were in, right? And then when we get back, we just display a little message that is just an adaptive code that will render in the chat. You know, why are we querying that thing? What's the DAX query and what's the result? So now let's pray and see if, so I turn off the other one, and then the only tool we have is that one. So let's see if that one will help me out. Ask it something simple. How many songs do I have? All right, so he's using our tool. Evaluate top 3 and see if we bug. No, okay, it's going on. See the result here. So evaluate top 3, that's the top 3 records. And now in the chat, so it will render in M365, it will render in Teams, but like in the chat here, we see he has pinged Fabric twice, right? And then exploring the song table structure by retrieving the first 3 records to understand the columns available before counting. So now I have explored the song table structure. I need to count the total number of rows. So if I click on it, I'll see the DAX query that will just fire and then the result. That's just for the thinking. And then here we have all, we have 550,000 songs. So here we're mixing calling a DAX and also displaying in the chat all the thinking, which for the user, it's much more cooler to read something every 10, 15 seconds than versus waiting, 45 seconds or a minute. Rendering visual. So basic of visual you can do in those agents is ask it to put in the system instruction, you push and play with the mermaid. So here we say, if available, use chart tool to illustrate your answer. If not, use mermaid blocks. So we didn't activate the chart tool. For the chart tool, it's an example. We have a matplotlib MCP server. All it does is, as an input, it's like basically behind the scene, it's like the matplotlib in Python. So if you look at the function, the input that matplotlib has, it's like we took just that and then we just expose them nicely to the AI. So you just have to put the format and the chart he wants, the format, rerun the Python, but like procode, as your function, rerun the procode, Python, generate the picture, come back to the chat. So this is that little tool here, generate chart. So now, if I'm going, give me good insight about my songs. So you should play you should still fire up the DAX query, but then in the answer, we hopefully should see it fire that MCP server, generate the matplotlib picture, embed that in the chart, and then that will be way better than mermaid block. So we're seeing our DAX query. How are we doing on time, Jeff?
You're good. You get about 20 minutes left.
So, and then you see, it's almost like if you get a question, you're going to have to write queries. And then maybe depending on the result of the first query, you're going to write the second query is going to be different and so on. So that's like a little bit like how it is doing is like, depending on the result of the previous query is changing. It's not going to fire all the time the same queries, right? Oh, and here we go. So he has done all of his query to explore his data. And now calling the MCP generate chart tool. So he's calling it 3 times, give it some time to process, and then it will generate a beautiful chart. Just see. So if you look at this tool, all it does, you see like, so we have key the intent. So which don't dominate the music library by song. It gives you the data. What is the key takeaway if it were an insight? And then what are the parameters that we will be passed into the matplotlib, right? So now that looks different, right? Inside, genre distribution, rock dominate, audio DNA by genre. Inside, temporal trend. Let's open that one. Song production peak in 2019, 2021 songs are most popular on average. And he plot the song count, the average popularity, but they have plenty data in there. But just to show you, like, you could really push the things with this type of mechanism. And then all we're doing here is taking a little bit of procode, which honestly is cracking up a matlib in Python. It's not like it's basic level, and then embedding that into properly conversational tool for the AI to use it. I'm going to share another trick for displaying chart, because here the architecture, and ping Jeffrey and I if you want to implement those things, happy to share. Here, technically, what's happening is we are calling a Azure function in the backend, running matplotlib, saving that on the blob storage, and then just responding the URL of the blob storage. So like here, the thing, when you respond from the chart, he's getting the URL that he embeds in the chat. So that's the architecture. There are another way to enhance your chat with charts is using adaptive card. I don't have the demo here, but I do have screenshots. Of what it would look like. So here, all we're doing is creating 2 topics, and one topic is to parse the data, and the other topic is to render the data, and the data is rendered with an adaptive card, like we were like similar to the thinking adaptive card we had earlier. You will get slightly different user experience where a matplotlib versus an adaptive card. So it depends. The beauty of that architecture here is you don't have to make that. Everything lives in 2 topics in Copilot Studio. You don't have to go to Azure Functions, create a blob, and blah, blah, blah. So you don't have that part of the stack to maintain. If you go that route, all the code is just 2 topics that lives in Copilot Studio. It's pretty elegant. The link is in there. There is a link there. So it's from a colleague of us, James. He has put it on the GitHub. It's just fresh. So we're happy to share the link with you guys. But he has he even put the YAML of those topics on his GitHub. So feel free to give it a try. Charts. So we're talking about charts. Often, so charts, charts is great in chat. What you don't want, I think what the risk is to create charts that compete with an existing Power BI chart, basically. So like if your user has like loving Power BI charts they use all the time, watch out too much before you start putting new charts in the chat or make sure they are good. So the trick is you could 100% have a Copilot, you have like your Power BI that's set up with a couple of tables, have like we saw a Copilot connected to your Fabric tables, and then within the instruction, tell him like, hey, at the time you're chatting, when you're chatting about that thing, why don't you also give the Power BI link with the filter what matter from the chat? So let me give you an example. It may be more telling. So I have my Fabric data model with my bot log and bot log tables, right? All my log and transcript. All I did is created a Power BI quickly as Copilot, created me a quickly Power BI report so I can see on top of this data. That's just to emulate, like, okay, I have this Power BI I want to work with. That's always been the case. Now, in my context here, if I'm going back to the chat, and I'm going to say, check out which bot has the most conversation this week. So it's going to fire DAX at my data set, maybe give me a chart. But more importantly, what I want to show is he should come up with the name of one bot. And then from there, provide me a link to the Power BI we were just earlier, filter with just the bot he's going to come up with, hopefully. Right. So those type of mechanism, that way you can, work from your existing assets, and the time you spend on developing those Power BI report, come in for your business user and add them an agent that is like white space. If the whole user wants to only do Power BI reports, no problem. But if the new user wants to say, hey, I may start the agent, actually this is super cool, and then you'll see it'll act almost as a reference source. Like we often say, for AI, for hallucination, we almost need to prove and show, what the actual data source is. Well, those Power BI are perfect for that. And then he's still working on. Yeah, full DAX query. So like a Fabric data agent, today, you would not get those type of, like here, it may be a little bit more control. Then you may be a little bit more in control, that's what I'm saying, of a Fabric data versus a Fabric data agent, because here you can access all the logs and telemetry, and it's all GA. You can also, we didn't talk about the model. Here we are running Anthropic models, either I don't know which one, but like either Sonnet or Opus, which are now GA in Copilot Studio. So you really giving the best AI the straight tool to be the best efficient. Okay, and he's still thinking, wow, he did a lot. So hopefully I'm getting something cool. He fell here. I don't find one where he fell. See, that one is a good one. He's sending up a complicated DAX query, and the thing, Fabrics come back telling us that there is an error. And actually, also, the Power BI connector is actually in Fabric are very good. It's very good error message. So the next is probably using group by instead of summarize column to group the virtual table by extracted bot ID. So it just fixes itself. That's what we're saying here. Like he's trying to summarize column, doesn't work. Blame group by and summarize column. Right. So that's to show also the importance when you're building those tools, feedback the error, because otherwise we would have stopped there. Right. And then here it's still thinking, wow, that's a big query. I didn't expect that. At least they give me the thinking. He didn't do any chart yet. So wow, we are in for a lot. All right, while he's doing that, let's give some other time. Connecting to Google BigQuery. So if your organization is using Google BigQuery, that's kind of a little bit of, I hate to say that, the equivalent of Fabric, even if you Google BigQuery, you're most likely going to need Fabric. But that's, if you're doing that way, Google now offers out of the box MCP to query this to query Google BigQuery. So all you have to do is back to my. Here we go. Okay, let me just do that. Okay, bot conversation for this week. So you give me a nice graph. Table talk. Okay, that's our current chatbot. That makes sense because this is the one I was preparing for this session today. That is the one that has the most conversation. Copilot for Google BigQuery. That is another agent. I have. Okay, that's pretty cool. But the most important here is you can explore further in Power BI. So if I'm clicking on that thing, at this point, I should see the filter of the context of my chat, which is table talk, the most talked chatbot this week. And then here we go. On the right, we can see we are filtered. And that should work. I don't want to say out of the box, out of Power BI, but this is pretty, it's very low. There's not much code to do, but it is very powerful. The way it is done is just, I'll show you. The way it is done is when appropriate, offer links to Copilot log Power BI reports with relevant bot ID filter. And we give it the patterns. This is not the bot. This is just the patterns, how to plug the link. Okay. Like, now, connecting to a different data stack than Microsoft. I'm going to turn off my DAX query. And then actually, we could mix and match. That would be fun too. And I'm going to turn on Google BigQuery. If I click on it, it'll show me from the server side all the data, and from all the data I have access, all the tools I have to query Google. If I'm going quickly here, so this is Google Cloud, my demo tenant. I have here my project, and all we're going to do is query open data that they have. So in the instruction, what we've done, we refresh that thing. We give it the project ID we just saw, and then for the data set, use BigQuery public data set. So is there a data set for stars? I know there is one. If you launch Google BigQuery MCP server, they ask me to connect. Right. So let me go connect to my Google. So the way it works is MCP server. like I said, the bottleneck usually with MCP server is the connection. So when you work with the Power Platform comes out of the box with either plenty connectors, but also you can bring your own API, wrap it or MCP, wrap it up into a connector, and get all the governance and the telemetry for all of your enterprise users. So if you're just a builder, you may not do that, but like your organization has the power to enable those connectors. It may be Google, it may be whatever, for you and anyone to build safely and govern. We connect. Here we go. All right.
Hey, Nico,
I know
we've got a few
Yep.
minutes left in the hour. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or anything. I've addressed at least one in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm about to finish actually. I'm gonna just ask it to, can you plot the big deeper star and about 50 stars left. All right, we're gonna let it see what it goes. You should go to the data set, the public data set that has like 7 million stars. The location, or like how much luminosity they have, and then plot us something of the Big Dipper constellation. That will close the meeting. Any question, Jeff?
We had a question in the Q&A around, around kind of governance around data and data security, just making sure that none of our data is leaving the tenant, and that none of the data is training any other LLMs that are out there, Anthropic,
Yeah.
OpenAI, depending on what's being used.
Yeah, I can take that. And I'm going to start. So the two questions is, how do we secure enterprise data, and do we use this data for training other AI engine? So the last one, no, absolutely no. Your data is your data. Like what's living on your tenant stays on your tenant, and the way like those AI labs do, like it's in a. I mean, if you download ChatGPT for free, yeah, they're gonna use your data and they're gonna see how you do it. But like enterprise contract, this is all SOC 2 compliance. Absolutely not. And then data security. So I was touching on the Power Platform connectors, and that's what it does. I mean, it does many things, but what it does is the connectors, like when I was pinging the Power BI connector dataset, it already knows me, it already knows my entra, it has just access to what I have access if I were in Power BI. So basically, you could almost, like what I'm trying to say is you could almost iterate fully pro code, and then just by leveraging the connection, the connector that are like govern, you are like least user privilege out of the box. Now, after that, it depends on your data stack. Like Dataverse is like the champion of governing your data, right? So at scale, right? So the mechanisms are not too complicated, but like doing at scale is where it's complicated. So Dataverse is champion for that, where you can govern obviously per row, per column, who has access, what have you. So in a true business application, when you stand up this type of data, you have all the tools to build your application with security by design first. If you connect to something else, that I don't want to say Snowflake, and your data security there is management and so on is all messed up, yeah, that's the problem. And all you can do at this stage is just trying to play, service principal or trying to play security at the tool level. But if you really want to architect a true solution, secure and safe, you should maintain and govern at like the data column level. And then here we go. Keep printing the bigger star. Let me see if we get something. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Big Dipper doesn't look like Big Dipper to me. Anyway, but that's coming from data from 7 million records tables there. So I want to see to push that. I wanted to push the fact that somehow, sometimes we think, oh, this is Copilot Studio. It cannot connect to so many data, to big data, because low code, when we don't know better. No, like those type of mechanism, we are smart and we put the load to the Fabric, to the Google BigQuery, and so on. I think I'm a good stop, Jeff. I'll take any question if we have time. If not.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. There was one other question that was asked a couple minutes ago. How often do the connections need to be refreshed?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. It depends. It really depends. So if you're working with the whole Microsoft stack, that works this way perfectly. Like that was that smooth. When you need to connect to others, there are mechanism. Like right now, if you saw like in my Google BigQuery, I probably have like every hour I need to kind of ask me for connection. The reason is because I didn't configure properly the MCP server where I need. So that's usually the bottleneck to unlock, like connecting those those things. After that, the AI is not much. It's not much. It's just more or less the same. It's a lot of time is that to figure out. I know Snowflake. You also have when you connect it to Snowflake on their hand, they will whitelist IP. Like only certain IP can ping the thing. So you have on their hand, create some whitelisting IP when it's working with Microsoft suites. So there is stuff to do on the connector, the MCP connector, to properly declare in Copilot Studio and Power Platform, like I have not done properly for Google Query here. But there are also often mechanisms to do depending on which environment you are connecting to.
Yeah, good. Where do the costs for using MCP go, and where can they be seen?
Oh, yeah, nice. So two level, like if we take, let's say Fabric example, or even Google BigQuery. So we have the first cost, that is I call it the user experience cost. Copilot Studio, at the end of the day, is mostly UX layer of your app stack. So that cost for Copilot Studio is it's just credit. So credits that depending on how many chats, how many features you use, you'll consume different type of credit. We have estimator and we have reporting for that. The other good news is if your end users already has the M365 Copilot on top of their email and calendar, these are like already included. So if you are in that situation, Copilot Studio cost layer is 0. But Fabric or Google BigQuery, because honestly, we are putting the load on them to just query the thing, they have a cost. So Google BigQuery, Fabric has, capacity unit. So those type of things are not coming from Copilot Studio per se, but you still, in your whole solution stack, still want to, account for that cost.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Last question that we've got. I know we're at time, so I appreciate the folks that are still hanging on. What are the pros and cons of using Fabric Data Agent versus the DAX query tool?
Yeah, we touched briefly on that earlier, but a couple of them. First, today, Fabric Data Agent, you cannot pick your model. You cannot pick which it's under the hood. It's a service. Within Copilot Studio, you'll be able to fire DAX with Claude. Makes a difference, big difference. Then when your table is easy for music, you don't see difference. When you get messy table, that would make a difference. The other thing is, today, if you want to architect, if you want to explore, yeah, but if you want to architect GA, Fabric Data Agent by themselves are GA, but Fabric Data Agent plug into Copilot Studio is still in preview. So if you grow those, use that as, I don't want to say, don't go on prod next week with it. That makes sense. Where here we are full GA. The other pro, like we saw, is today, if you want to have access to full log and telemetry of what is happening on top of your Fabric with your AI agent, you don't have that today in Fabric Data Agent. Like here, we saw it, we display in a chat, we have it in a table, and so it's all in its architect GA here. So that can be prod next week. So what did I say? Fabric Data Agent, one part is in preview. You can select your model, or the number of tables too. Like a Fabric Data Agent, good leading recommendation is like 5, 10, 12, 10 tables. With this mechanism, it will discover the whole data model for you. And then you see like list table, you will discover the whole table and then pick up the table. And then from there, look up the column. And then from there, fire the query. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Inside Action Innovate. The Master Series Elevate.